Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll get started in just a few minutes as people start coming in. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I see a lot of people starting to trickle in. We'll get started in just a couple minutes. Hi, Tiffany. Thanks so much for joining us today. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Tell us where you're from. We'll get started in just a couple seconds. I see some people still trickling in. Okay, we got someone from LA. Oh, someone from Pittsburgh, Dublin, Fresno, Bakersfield, San Jose. Awesome. Welcome, everyone. Chicago. Awesome. I've got some international folks, someone from Thailand, Mexico.
Oh,
That's
Wonderful.
exciting.
yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. Please continue to introduce yourselves. We'll go ahead and get us started here. So thank you so much for joining us for our breakout session on early math coaching. My name is Madhu Kapoor. I'm a research associate at Wested. I'm joined here today in a very exciting way because we're joined by our partners from the Count, Play, Explore initiative who will take a second to introduce themselves. John?
Hello all, my name is John Dewick. I work in Fresno for the County Office of Education. And part of my role is supporting Count, Play, Explore. It began as the California Early Math Initiative, and we've expanded to include science and computer science alongside mathematics. And we are now Count, Play, Explore, and we partner with the Early Math Project that puts on this event.
Thanks, John. And Elin?
Hi, everyone. My name is Elin Anderson. I'm one of the PK-12 coordinators at the Ames Center for Math and Science Education. We are also located here in Fresno, and Ames is a partner in the Count, Play, Explore, or the Early Math Initiative. And so we have done a lot of work with early childhood educators across the state.
Wonderful. So in today's session, we're going to focus on how to provide early math coaching to support the professional growth of educators working with children from birth to age 8. So as we go through the session today, there's going to be several opportunities for you to share in the chat. So please use that feature to ask us any questions and share your ideas and thoughts. And again, feel free to introduce yourselves as well. We'd love to hear from you. So the content that we're presenting today is part of Count, Play, Explore, which, as John mentioned, was formerly called the California Statewide Early Math Initiative, or CAME. And CPE is a statewide initiative that aims to provide professional learning and resources for providers, educators, and families to improve math and science outcomes for children from birth to age 8. And led by the Fresno County Superintendent of Schools, the Count, Play, Explore initiative is a collaboration between Ames, Wested, and the California State Board of Education. So as part of this initiative, we're developing a series of online professional learning modules and training toolkits for providers such as trainers, coaches, and administrators to support early childhood educators in early math and science. And these resources will include things like slide decks, adult and child activities, handouts, videos, and other resources that educators can use for their professional learning. So the content that we'll present today is part of the early math coaching learning module. We're still in the early phases of developing all of the learning modules and training toolkits. So this is a nice little preview for what's to come. So please stay tuned with news about these resources and when they're going to be made publicly accessible. So our goals for today's session, we hope that you will learn strategies for building positive, culturally responsive coaching relationships. We'll actually observe some video examples of the coaching cycle in different kinds of early childhood settings. And then finally, we'll share some examples of early math resources that you can use to support educators' teaching practice through coaching. So before we get into the specifics of coaching and early math, we wanted to take a moment to first ground us in what we mean by coaching. So broadly speaking, we define coaching as a relationship-based process that supports educators' professional learning and growth. And it's grounded in a collaborative learning relationship between a coach and a coachee. So there's a lot that we can unpack in this definition. So I encourage you to share in the chat here what aspects of this definition really resonates or speaks to you. And you can see that I've highlighted a couple of terms here. So relationship-based, collaborative, thinking about the relationship between the coach or the person who's providing the support and feedback, and then the coachee, the person who's receiving that support and feedback, and that it's a bi-directional kind of learning that happens and the relationship that builds between the two individuals. See a lot of people sharing in the chat here, relationship-based, support, collaboration, personal. Great. Yep. So we'll dive right into that personal relationship building, and I'll pass it over to Elin now to share more about building coachee relationships. Elin?
Thank you, Matthew. So again, a lot of you put in the chat, you wrote building relationships, collaboration, and the foundation of coaching is building a relationship with your coachee, with the person that you're coaching. And again, it's an equal partnership between the coach and the coachee, and it's built on trust. So there has to be that trust there for work to move forward. And John, did you have anything to add? Do you have?
Yeah, I was thinking when we consider what this looks like, the idea that sometimes you have to develop that relationship really quickly because you might not be meeting with this educator very long, or this might be something that's going to span over a year or two or three where you're coaching somebody. We don't, age out of coaching. We all want to be able to be coached at some point to help in a place where we're unsure and uncertain. So sometimes it's really quick, sometimes it's over time. And so how we build that rapport and connect is really important to consider with every interaction that we take with somebody.
Yeah, so building that rapport is really key to, again, because like John said, sometimes you don't have a lot of time. Sometimes you have a longer period of time. So let's go ahead to the next slide. And let's think about a time. So reflect on a time when someone helped you learn a new skill. It can be within the context of education or outside. Maybe it's something, a hobby or something that you enjoy doing. Any situation where somebody helped you learn something new. What feelings and thoughts come to mind as you reflect on that experience? And if you wouldn't mind responding in the chat, put some words or phrases. Relief, supported, great. Excitement, it's always great to learn something new. Happiness, encouraged, yes.
I see that frustration and perseverance. Sometimes it's like you get nervous when you're trying something new, or when you're trying to help someone. Like, is this really going to work? Is my support going to be enough to give them? Thank you, Patricia, for writing down nervous. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah. Stressed, yes, it is. Sometimes it is stressful to learn something new. Yeah, definitely. especially when it's maybe part of your job expectations. There's always new initiatives that are being implemented in schools.
Yeah, very much.
Encouraged. Oh, doubt if I'm doing it correct. That is definitely, thank you for sharing that, Cecilia. That is definitely something that an experience or a feeling that we can experience when we're learning something new. Am I doing it right?
Yeah. Nice. Those are all great responses. Thank you for those.
Yes. So as we think about building that coach-coachee relationship, these are some things that we view as foundational to building that relationship. One of the keys is using active listening skills. And some of you may have heard that term before. Some of it may be new to some of you, but active listening means that you are listening to hear, you're present and attentive. This is your opportunity. Again, thinking about what John said, you may not have a lot of time. This is your opportunity to learn about the person that you're coaching, to gather information. So you're listening to learn and not to respond. So you're really taking in information. And then you also want to, during that listening, you also want to learn about their early math knowledge, maybe their skill and mindset. Do they excel in certain areas, or do they have needs in certain areas where they want some support? And those could be support in a variety of areas, including content, pedagogy, mindset, even classroom management. Where are they at today? Like what are their needs? Where are they in their trajectory in terms of their educational pathway, in their teaching journey? So meeting them where they're at, and be flexible to their needs. So in thinking about being flexible, you're working on making plans to work with them, you're gathering information, but as you get going, you need to continue to listen, and you need to be flexible if you need to pivot and sort of, shift to where they're, so that you can be on the same path with them.
Yeah.
So, and so I want to give a minute to let people respond in the chat. What are some ways what are some things that you do to help build that rapport with people that you may coach? So here, icebreakers, respect. Thank you for sharing that. That's, yeah.
While people are typing these in, a few people are raising their hands. If you have something specific, you can put that in the Q&A section. If you look across the bottom of the webinar, there's one area that says Q&A, and we can also respond to you directly through there.
Yeah. So again, I'm looking as people are responding in the chat, I'm hearing listening coming up quite a bit. So that is the number one thing that you can, again, really, that's really critical to helping build that coaching relationship. That's the way that you're going to be able to empathize, show respect, build that trust, and really get a lot of information about where they are at and what their needs are.
Yeah, I saw a couple people also saying getting to know the person first before getting into the work. And that's part of that relationship building of
Mhm.
developing that personal relationship with them and getting to know them as an individual. What are their strengths? What are their goals? Who are they as people outside of work before getting into the more specific nuances of your coaching relationship?
Yeah, what is their life like outside of the classroom? What are their interests?
Well, thank you all for sharing. We're going to dive next into the coaching cycle, and you'll see as we go through the coaching cycle how aspects of relationship building are present through every single aspect of it. And so when we talk about a coaching cycle, what we're talking about is a process in which coaches and coachees are working together to set goals, make plans, and reflect on how their plans went. There's many different approaches to a coaching cycle, but coaching cycles generally include these 4 parts: plan, teach, reflect, and apply. And it's an iterative process. So although we'll be talking about these steps in order today, in actuality, coaching is actually happening in a very ongoing and iterative way, where you might start and stop at different points, or you might jump back and forth between the steps. It's a very fluid and flexible process. So we're going to now explore each part of the coaching cycle using a set of video examples. And these videos actually feature one of our partners here, John, as an early math coach, and Ismarai, a first grade educator. And just for context for these videos, since they are pretty short clips, John and Ismarai had been working together along with other educators at the school for about a year prior to filming these videos. So the first step that we'll talk about is plan. During the planning phase, the coach and the coachee are developing that collaborative learning partnership that we talked about earlier. They're learning about one another, building that relationship, establishing expectations, and discussing their goals and desired outcomes. They might record these goals and a plan for achieving them as part of an action plan or a coaching agreement. And as they continue to work together over time, they can review and update those goals and their plans as needed. So we're going to now observe a video of John and Ismarai discussing their plan. Again, this is a first grade classroom, and they're discussing their plan for a geometry lesson. And as you observe this video, I'd like for you to try to identify the math learning goals that they chose to focus on for this particular coaching session.
Good morning, Ismarai. How are you today?
I'm good. How about yourself?
I'm super. So I'm excited to talk about like the next steps for math and what we're doing, and looking forward to what's going to happen here. We've so far done some demonstrations and observations around number talks, counting collections, and shape talks, and now we're going to go more into geometry. So tell me about how geometry has been so far for you.
So far, geometry has been really great for us. Students have been learning about 2D shapes, 3D shapes, and then how we can cut those shapes into halves and quarters.
When I was thinking about geometry, what that looks like, and there's 3 different standards that we have in first grade. And I was going to focus on the first one and the third one. Let me look at that real quick. The distinguishing between attributes, so we can talk about what makes that shape, what defines it. And then also, again, going into partitioning. The students will look at these 4 shapes, and I'll just ask which one doesn't belong. And the idea is that they will pick a shape, and there's not so much there isn't a wrong answer, but they just need to defend why they think that shape doesn't belong. And then, because we talked a little bit about the idea of defining that and other attributes, I thought a sorting activity would be good. So I did this. I have these shapes here that they can look through, and I was going to have them in pairs. So this will be whole class.
Okay.
Where we'll sit on the ground together, and then this will be in pairs Well, I'll ask you, this is where you'll come in. So this I'll do on my own, and then we'll kind of co-teach this part.
Okay.
Where I'll give them the different cards, and I'll ask them to sort them based off whatever attribute they come up with. Anything I should be aware of coming into the classroom this time? I'm somewhat familiar with your students, but anything that's new or unique right now?
At the moment, no. This will be really fresh in their brains because we just reviewed over this. So they'll be excited to get some hands-on activity.
Nice, nice. So when you watch that video, what are some thoughts that came to mind about how I interacted with Esmerai? I'll keep talking while you chew on this to think about what that interaction looked like, what that conversation looked like, what came to your mind in terms of what you like, I do that, or I haven't done that before, or I do things similar or very different, might all come to mind. And in this situation, I didn't want to plan too much because I wanted it to be something that was real, right? If it's scripted, then it's not a real example for people to look at. But then Esmer and I also have known each other for a year at this point, so we were able to just talk freely. We'd built rapport from us beforehand and was able to have her share. And so I see some of you putting in things like one topic led to the other. Someone put collaboration, and definitely that was kind of a stance that took in there where it wasn't just that I held the knowledge, but what we could do together. What have you done? What can I do? And how can I support doing that? But then also consulting a bit in terms of like where she's feeling strong, but where she might want to have some supports come in for that. So we moved between not just like I'm her coach, but consulting and then collaborating as we built what this lesson could be like. But then also saying, here's some ideas that I haven't seen you try or we haven't talked about to see what that would look like and what that could be. And definitely a team effort. So that this school I was coaching multiple grade levels. First grade was just one of them. And Esmerai is one where we were able to really work side by side to do some great things. I didn't have to build her up as much. I could just support her bits and pieces here and there. So thank you for the heart, whoever did that.
Well, I see one response of how where they asked if anything had changed in the classroom, which I think that's a great question to ask, and especially in the planning phase, because classrooms are always changing. There's always moving parts, and it's good for the coachee to know as a coach that you're aware of that. And yeah.
I don't take things for granted when I come in. I want to make sure I'm supporting her the best way possible.
Thank you for those reflections. We'll now dive into the next step of the coaching cycle, and we'll continue to follow John and Esmerai's journey. So in this part of the coaching cycle, the coach and coachee are going to work together to engage children in a math learning experience. And they might use one or more of these different practices. They might do an observation or co-teach, or the coach might model a math learning experience. And each of these different practices involves a different level of scaffolding or support that's provided by the coach. So diving into each of these a little bit further, the first, which is the least scaffolded approach, is observation. So a coach might observe a coachee facilitating that math learning experience. And as the coach is observing, they may record what they notice using objective or data-based language. So an example of that might be, instead of saying the lesson was engaging, an objective observation might be, children were observing the book illustrations while the educator was reading. So it's a very data-based and objective language that we're using to talk about what we notice.
Yeah, it's really important that the teacher doesn't see you as being just your opinion. You can talk about like what worked well and didn't work well, but if you have some data behind it to suggest like this is what you did, then you can really talk about what it means to change. You know, I can't talk with the teacher and say, well, you need to get better, right? I need to be able to describe what that looks like and talk about the small steps that go into that. And sometimes it's a matter of like, I saw a lot of kids moving around in your classroom, but it wasn't good. But let's talk about how many students were leaving their seat or stayed in their seat or were raising their hand or not raising their hand. There's some very everyday things that we can track and just give that data back to the teacher and talk about, but then also get specifically into like how it was taught and what was taught. Sometimes it's just the actions and the environment that we start making data points on and carry that into what the math actually looked like later on. So it's not just about this was great or what I liked, it's about what I saw and being able to make some kind of data piece out of it.
Exactly. And with co-teaching, that might involve a coach and a coachee kind of working together to facilitate that learning experience. And each of them might take on specific roles during that process. So one of them might teach one aspect of an activity and then the other one does, or they may co-lead and co-teach during that portion. And then with modeling, a coach might showcase ways of facilitating that learning experience while the coachee is the one that's observing. And this can really help them learn new teaching strategies that they can then apply later on more independently. And with modeling, it's super important that the coaches are demonstrating experiences that are very authentic and flexible and maybe even messy, so that coachees can actually benefit from observing something that's realistic and not something that feels like a performance. So let's dive into another example. Our same example as John and Ismarai, but through the co-teaching aspect. And so the first part of this video, Coach is modeling a geometry lesson while Ismarai, the educator, is observing. And then during the second part, John and Ismarai are co-teaching the lesson. And as you observe this video, we'd like for you to consider the ways that John is using these modeling and co-teaching strategies. And what are some situations in which you have used them, or how would you use these practices in your own work?
So we're going to do an activity called Which One Doesn't Belong? I'm going to show you 4 shapes and you're going to think about which one doesn't belong. And I want you to say, I think this one doesn't belong and why. So if you have your thumb up, what do you think?
Because the one right here at the last
This one?
part, yeah, that one is all white and the rest of them are pink.
Yeah, so this one is white and the rest of them are pink.
Yeah.
And if you agree, you can go like this. Remember, this is the I agree sign, right? And if you have a different answer, I'm looking for a fist with a thumb up and an answer right there. All right, what do you think?
Because the small triangle and the big triangle, it's like aiming different side.
All right, if this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4, do you mean this one?
Yes.
Tell me about that again.
It's aiming up and the big triangle is aiming sideways.
Ah, like it's pointed up and these are not pointed up.
That one is wrong, doesn't belong because it's a rectangle. These are all in triangle family. But this is our square family.
I'm going to hand each of you a baggie that's going to have some cards in it, and the cards are going to have some different shapes. When you get your cards, I want you to sort them into different groups based on what they can be grouped with, how they can be partnered, what is the same or different about them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what are some things that are the same? Amelia?
Okay, no, like this.
Uh-huh.
This. Like that.
Okay, those look the same.
Yeah, but this one's still.
It is tilted. Do you see another one that's almost the same? Jordan, is there any other shapes that are not closed all the way? Yes. So are these two open? Yeah, they have gaps, right? Do you see it? You said it doesn't have a top. If I were to close it, what shape would it be? Yeah. Okay, why are those the same?
Because the black and the black.
Oh, okay, they're shaded in. Why do these not belong?
Because there's only one
Is there?
Oh, there's only one what?
of all of these shapes. Rectangle, oval, cartoons, and rectangle.
What
Because
comes
they're
in?
not the same.
So what's not the same? What about their attributes, like the size?
Like
The-
the hexagon,
Yeah.
and chocolate chip,
Chocolate kid?
and the oval and diamond.
Yeah. Oh, it has no point. You're right. If you were able to connect those points, what shape would it make?
A triangle.
It would make a triangle. So, do you see how this one has a gap?
Yeah.
That one's called an open shape. And these are called closed shapes.
So there's a lot going on there, and it's if you watch it 3 or 4 times, you'll see a lot of stuff in the background that's exciting. So what I want you to think about here is that what was Esmeralda doing during this time? Where was she when I was teaching? She wasn't like off the screen, way in the back. She wasn't correcting papers. She wasn't just doing classroom management. She wasn't running to the office or, taking a break. She's there. She's off, not like in the back even. She's on the side engaged in what's happening, listening to what's happening. And then we can move to the co-teaching so that we're doing it together. So we're both asking questions, and we had talked about asking open-ended questions throughout that year. So that wasn't something that we were working on now. That was a natural part of what was happening. So she's engaged in it. One trap that I fell into early on as an academic coach is in an attempt to build rapport, I was doing a lot of demonstration lessons. And then I just became the guy that would come teach math sometimes. And I had to shift that to where I can build rapport and maybe I'll do a demo lesson, but really I'm there to give feedback on what's happening, to co-teach, a little bit of demo to share that lesson, and then letting the teacher take over so that they can be coached through that experience. A demo lesson is just observing. So I wanted Esmeralda to be able to observe a little bit, doing an activity she hadn't done before with which one doesn't belong, but then also be a part of the sorting and engaged in that. And then throughout this time, we both have a note sheet that we're using to keep track of what our thoughts are. That we don't have a lot of time to get to that during the lesson, right? But bits and pieces, we're writing things down with what we're seeing, what we're observing, what our questions are, what we're just wondering might be different or what might be new, because there's a lot of action going on. We have all these kids in 2s and 3s around the room sorting, talking. They want to share what they're doing. We're building a ton of vocabulary. I saw that. Yeah, like there's vocabulary all over the place right there to do this. So the idea of how can the teacher and the coach do this together and be partners in this is a really important thing. So there was a bit more planning for this on my part because I wanted to have those shapes cut out and ready to go. But typically, like I'm trying to come alongside that teacher at a very natural pace with what that looks like. And so we're side by side in preparation and working together for all of this. And just a quick note that all the materials that you see us using here, when this coaching suite is available for use in the future, the materials will be also.
Thanks, John. I also want to call out from the chat the higher level questioning that was happening and students being able to explain their thinking. And that's something that John was able to model. And you can also see Ismarai also doing that as part of the lesson. So that questioning and that leaving that time, that processing time for children to explain their thinking is something that I believe was also part of the coaching session. So I wanted to call that out. Elin, is there anything else that you would add about the teaching?
No, I would just add, I mean, just say ditto to what John shared about having an observation sheet or a note, providing the teacher with a note-taking tool, because I too fell into early on just doing a lot of model lessons where it would just be me coming in to do a lesson. And so within that planning piece, deciding if you're going to do a model lesson, what are you going to have, or what does the teacher want to observe, and have that be a focus, whether they want to take notes on student behavior that they see that they're interested in, or really maybe what you're doing, like maybe they want to take note of what kind of questions you're asking. But that is a really good tool to use, a note-taking sheet.
Great. I'm going to keep us moving along to the next step of the coaching cycle, which is reflect. So after facilitating a math learning experience, the coach and coachee are going to come together for a discussion and reflection. And during this time, it's important that the coach kind of creates that safe space for collaborative reflection and decision making. And so they may discuss, what was the coach and the coachee doing, or what were their observations during the learning experience. Also, what are the children doing and how are they engaged during that math learning experience? What did you hear? What did you see? And what does that make you notice and wonder? Those sorts of things. And then also thinking about the materials in the learning environment. This can also be a space to have that reflection and discussion as well. So let's observe this video of John and Ismarai reflecting and debriefing on the lesson. And as you observe, feel free to call out in the chat, and we'll also hear John here reflecting on the kinds of observations that each of them share with one another.
All right, Ismarai, what did you think of all that?
That was really exciting. I really liked how students were engaged and they were collaborating together. I think it was a really amazing lesson.
It was a lot of fun. There was a lot of moving parts in that one, so I wasn't quite sure how it would go. So I'm happy to hear that. Let's talk about what you observed, what you heard during that time.
Something that caught my interest was just you allowing students the flexibility to come up and point to it. There was that freedom to move around, wiggle, and just explain. And it was really interesting to see the students just focus on what can they visually see, they mentioned a lot okay, that one's a different color. And then diving into oh, well, that's not the same shape. So it was really interesting to see what they were focusing on.
Gotcha. Yeah, that gives multiple entry points, right? So if a student is more focused on the color or the shape or the orientation, it doesn't matter, right? As long as they can defend it. Okay, then what did you think about that sorting activity and all these cards?
I thought that was really fun, just seeing them be able to do that by themselves and just being able to walk around and just hear why. Some of them were able to classify it if they were shaded or not, if they were opened or closed. And then also they were okay, well, this one has 4 sides or these 2 are round. So it was really interesting to hear how each group classified it differently.
Yeah.
They were not all the same.
Yeah. And when I've done this one other time beforehand, and it was interesting because the students in general put them into multiple groups, whereas in this class, they really want to put them in 2 groups. Which surprised me. I didn't anticipate that. So it was interesting to hear them do that. And I ended up having 2 or 3 of the groups that I talked to, of the pairs, were well, I have this group and I have this group, and these just kind of don't belong.
Yeah.
I was all right, we can do that. But the term open came up with every group I talked to. So kudos to you. They remembered that.
A few comments about this. First of all, I don't know that purple is my favorite color, but I am wearing a purple shirt again today. So one thing to note is I mentioned I wasn't sure how it would go. I want to keep things real when I'm talking with a teacher. A typical classroom teacher doesn't have days and days to plan a lesson. And even though this was being filmed, I didn't want it to be contrived as this is just an everyday thing. So a little bit more time went into it because I needed to create the cards, as I mentioned earlier. But if a teacher typically has 15 to 30 minutes to plan for their math time, I don't want to take much more than that. Otherwise, I'm not being realistic for that teacher. And I did practice the lesson one time since I was going to be filmed for it. But often we don't have a chance to just practice our lesson in a classroom. We don't practice, we do what this means. So having this formal reflection time was great. I was able to sit with her, talk with her. We had a long time to plan and do this. Her school has PE specialists, and so she has some prep time twice a week where her whole entire class goes out with this PE specialist to take that time. So we were able to capitalize on that and have a longer debrief than we might normally have. Sometimes a debrief with a teacher is kind of like off to the side while the class is doing independent work. One time I was at a site where I had a roving sub with me, and after would do a demo lesson or a co-teaching with a teacher, then we would just go stand outside while the substitute took that. So that debrief is sometimes like this, formal. Sometimes it's standing outside the classroom, just having a conversation for 5 to 15 minutes with what that looked like. But I wanted to ask her open-ended questions about what she thought, get her opinion about things, explain some of my thinking as we went into it, and then just talk through those different pieces of where that came from in my mind and what it could look like in the future.
And then I also want to point out, someone in the chat commented about the materials, having the actual cards there as the physical material used in the lesson as a way to engage the teacher in that reflection, and actually having the materials right in front of them so that she can pinpoint exactly what she was observing the children noticing.
Mhm.
Great. I'm going to move us to the last piece of the coaching cycle, which is apply. And this might happen just as part of the end of that debrief or reflection conversation, or it might be a follow-up. But this is when the coach and the coachee are making their plans for future coaching sessions, and they're defining actionable next steps to kind of maintain that coach-coachee relationship over time. And the coachee can apply what they've learned as part of their coaching session in many different ways. So for example, they may implement some of the feedback immediately into the next time they implement that lesson, or they may go back to their goals and update them so that the coach and coachee can continue to meet regularly to work towards those goals. And for many coaches who work with multiple coachees, it can kind of be hard to keep track of, what you're working on and how the coachees are doing. And so it can be helpful to kind of record those notes in a type of coaching log or some kind of documentation system to help keep track of coachees' progress over time. And this is something that you can share with the coachee so that they're also looking at the same notes that you are. So we don't have a video for this next apply part, but since we have John here, if you can, John, please share with us kind of how you continued your coaching relationship with Ismarai, and what were some of those things that came out of that particular coaching session?
Yeah, so it was always a great conversation. And again, this is especially comfortable since Esmeralda and I not only know each other, but she's eager to learn and grow as a professional. So we could talk about like what her next steps could be based off of this. What will she be doing in geometry, in part based off of her curriculum, but in part off of what she might want to supplement and put before the students. I used the word environment before. What do you put before these children so that they can learn and grow and experiment? So how can she extend this? Maybe they get the cards again, or not every group of 2 or 3 had the same cards. They had some slightly different. They were all basically the same, but she could pull those cards out again, try them out, see what kind of responses they get. Will they sort them into 3 or 4 groups, or will they continue with like just the 2 groups that they have? And might their vocabulary deepen? If vocabulary becomes a focus for her next step, will she ask them to do some certain thought patterns as she moves into that? So future steps might look like extending this lesson or moving on to the next lesson, or what has she learned about the pedagogy with whole group instruction, with them coming up and talking about things, or pairing kids up? Will she apply that to the next lesson? So we can make goals off of, I want to try more of this. I want to see what that will look like. Here's what's coming up, and how can I generalize this work into another area so it's something that stays with her as a good teaching strategy, but also coming back to this lesson if necessary. So there's a lot of ways we can do that, and then I can, have that written down, record that, so the next time we meet, I can follow up with saying, how did this go? You talked about that. This is something you wanted to try, and then I have those prompts for the next time that we meet. And just on a side note with that, I take all of my notes with a teacher handwritten on a piece of paper, because it's just between the 2 of us. If I'm typing things in, that seems a little more permanent and a little bit more of a evaluator type thing, that I'm like checking on you. But if it's just handwritten and comfortable, that way it continues to make things between us just friendly, so I can just reference my notes and talk about things directly with her without it being overly formalized.
Thanks, John. Elin, is there anything else that you would add about the apply or any aspect of the coaching cycle in your background?
Just that the apply is really important. Again, I think a lot of times that reflection part naturally goes into a discussion about how you might, what that apply might be and what would possible next steps be between you and the coachee, and what might be a next area of focus. So again, it just sort of naturally is a continuation. And again, you start that process of planning, and so, yeah, and it just looks different in every situation. So it may be like they want to try, they might want to try a co-teaching situation if they haven't before, or maybe they really need some more support with just either you observing. Yeah, it just depends, again, because everybody's different, every classroom is different. We all have different needs, and so, yeah.
Thanks, and that's a great segue into our next kind of closing kind of considerations for early math coaching. So I'll have John share some of the considerations that he's considering when he's approaching coaching in early math.
Certainly. So with we have like 4 minutes left. So just a quick note on things to think about is really talking with teachers about the bigger picture. That is not just about what does a good worksheet look like, making sure they know their math content, that they can speak to solid math and not just kind of about the math. We want to make sure that they know what this math means, and good pedagogy. And sometimes just helping them with classroom management. Sometimes a new teacher is just like, just help me get this class under control. And then we'll talk about math. Or we talk about math, pedagogy being a way to help entice students to help with classroom management, that a good offense is always better than a good defense. So how can we really engage the kids in math and help that come along for just a great classroom experience for everyone who's involved in that?
All right, in the last couple minutes that we have left, we just wanted to share some of the resources that are already publicly accessible for you as you engage in coaching in early math. And as we mentioned, the learning module on early math coaching will also be eventually released as well. This is just a small snippet of all of the content that's in that learning module. So a couple of things that you can begin to look at. One is the M to the fifth early math approach. So this is a framework for supporting coachees' early math teaching. It's a research-based, center-based, inquiry-based, and flexible approach. And you can see that it's M to the fifth, so there's 5 different M's, and you can really hone in on any one M or multiple M's as part of your coaching sessions. And, we could do a whole session on just the M to the fifth early math approach. But what we have currently that's available are these video guides that you can use to explore further. And so there's 4 different video guides, and what these contain are information about M to the fifth practices as a whole, and then also additional videos that illustrate that in action, and different prompts that you can use to reflect on your own practice. So this is a resource that you can use. The link is here for you to kind of explore this further on your own. And then the second resource that we wanted to share is countplayexplore.org. So if you're working with families or educators, there is a whole suite of resources here. There's videos, book guides with lots of different recommendations for math-related books, as well as activities that go along with those books. So highly encourage you to check out this website and all of the resources that it has to offer. And yes, we can share these links in the chat. Thank you. And I know we are pretty much at time here. So on behalf of all of us, just wanted to thank you all for attending this breakout session. Elin, would you like to close us out?
Oh, sure. No, I was just going to say, yeah, thank you for attending the breakout session and your thoughtful participation. We will be at the Q&A session happening right after if you'd like to pop in and ask us any more questions. We've also shared our emails in case you want to if you would like to reach out to us directly, and have a wonderful day and time at the rest of the symposium.
Thanks so much. And yes, these links are also the ones that are in the chat.
Madhu, you can close the webinar without, you can close webinar to participants to give them a chance to hop off.
Okay, we'll look for that button.
I think it's the backstage button, if I remember correctly. Yeah, go backstage.